to another video in our quick tips series. These are videos designed to show you ways that you can quickly and easily improve the user experience within an IBM Planning Analytics system. Today we're going to look at a couple of issues that are related. One of them is something that users have been asking me since the early days of TM1, which is whether they can share privately created views with each other. And the answer used to be essentially no. Now, since Planning Analytics Workspace has been introduced, we have had a content store become available to us. And with this content store, we can enable that sharing of views. Now, the second issue is the fact that most of the applications we're creating now utilise both Planning Analytics Workspace and Planning Analytics for Excel as the primary user interfaces. But views that were saved down in Workspace are not by default available in Planning Analytics for Excel. And there is a simple change we can make so that those two become much more joined up. So we'll start by looking at how to simply share views. Now, within the content store, we can just create some folders. So what we'll do is create one here called Exchange. And in this folder, our goal is to provide an area for users to individually share views that they think are useful to each other. Now, you could obviously do this by department, by project, by system, or any other way you see fit. But in this example, we're going to keep it simple and just have a single folder. And in that folder, I'm going to assign some permissions. So I already have some groups created within Workspace. So I've got my administrators group that I always want to have full control to all of my folders. And then I have a View Exchange Read and a View Exchange Write group. Now, the Read group, I'm just going to give that view access. So that means that any user who is part of that group will be able to see anything that is saved down in this folder. And then in my View Exchange Write group, I'll give that edit access. So any user that is assigned to that group can come in here and save views down. Now, when we OK that, and it's as simple as that. So if I go to a book that I created earlier as Sales by Region, in here we just have a basic view, but I'll make a little change, just swap the year and measures around. Now if I come to the intent bar, we have our ribbon appears up here with a disk icon. So if I click save and save view as, what I'll call it is just sales, and we see underneath the location it wants me to save it. So this is our content store. So under shared, we have the Exchange folder that we created. So if I save it in there and then close this book, when I go to my Exchange folder, we see our view is in there. And now any user who is part of a group that has edit access to this folder can save views down in there. The only exception to that is if they are part of the consumer role access, as a consumer will not have access to the save icon within Planning Analytics Workspace, but anyone who is an analyst, a modeler, or an administrator will be able to save views in here. And someone who is a consumer, as long as they have access to the folder, they can read those views. Now, what we want to do is also make it so that all of our views that are in the content store can be accessed from Planning Analytics for Excel. And to do that, we need to make a configuration change on the Planning Analytics Workspace server. So if I go to my Workspace server here, and this is a Windows install, it is a very similar process you would need to follow for a Linux install as well. But in our Windows install here, if I go to my install directory for Workspace and go to the config folder, we have two PS1 files in here called defaults and poor. Now if I bring up both of those to be edited, poor is the one that our system is actually using to decide how to handle things. And we'll see that it doesn't by default have many environment variables set in here. Whereas if I go to the defaults, we'll see there's a lot more information. So it's always worth having a look through here to see if there's anything else that you want to enable or disable in your particular environment. But the one we're looking for here is Enable View Exchange. And that is just to say that the Planning Analytics for Excel can use the content store. By default, it is false. But if I copy that over to my poor PS1 file and paste that in, and just change it from false to true, then all I need to do is save this file and restart my Workspace server, and the content store will be available in Planning Analytics for Excel. There's a couple of things to note. One is that you need both Workspace and Planning Analytics for Excel to be versions 44 or higher. You also need your actual Planning Analytics TM1 server to be 2.08 or higher. You can use this with 2.07 interim fix free, but ideally you want to be using at least 2.08 or higher. Now, there's also a possibility that if you're an old TM1 user, you are not actually licensed to use Workspace. So in order to use this content store, you do need to be licensed for using Workspace. But as long as all those things are in place, we can do this. So then when we go into Planning Analytics for Excel, if we look at the ribbon by default, the Add section has just 3 icons in it, as Exploration, List and Action button. But when I sign in, what it will do is go away to the Planning Analytics Workspace server and ask what configuration settings are in place. And for this particular server, as we saw before, we have set the Exchange Views to true. So it has found it, and now it's given us a 4th icon called View, which if I click on, it gives me a pop-up box that shows me my content store. So if I go into Shared, we can see the Exchange folder we created before, and in there we see the sales view that was created previously. Now I'm logged in as the user Alan List, who is an analyst user, and he is part of the Exchange View Right group that we assigned in here. So if we open this view in the viewer, and it pops up here, so we see it as we saw before. Now what we notice in the cube viewer within Planning Analytics for Excel is there is no save button in here. So you can't save a view directly from the cube viewer, but if you're working with an exploration type view, which we will swap this to now, what we now see is the ribbon changes a little bit and we get this exploration section. And in the exploration section there is this disk icon with save view, and it has 2 options in here. So there's save to content store, which is what we've been working with in Workspace, or there's save to server. Now save to server is the traditional method of saving views that we see over here. So you have your views and your private views. Now if you do that from Planning Analytics for Excel, you will be able to see those within Planning Analytics Workspace by going down the navigation tree. But if you are not an admin user, you will only be able to save private views as yours have been. But I'll make a little change in here again, so I'll just change the year that it's working at so that we can see something is happening. So I'll maybe go to our current year at the moment instead, which is 2020. I'll do a replace and close. So there we go, and now I'll go save to content store, and it brings up another box here, which again is the traditional view that we recognise from when we were working in Workspace. So I can again choose my Exchange folder here and my name. If I save that down, now when I go back to Workspace, if I refresh the Exchange folder, we see the view in there. And as the user in Planning Analytics for Excel, I was Alan List. I saved this view down, and immediately as myself, Declan Rodger, I am able to see the view in Workspace. So it gives us that way to truly share views between users, and also very importantly, I think, having the ability to synchronize Planning Analytics Workspace and Planning Analytics for Excel is of great benefit. Now, the way that I expect I personally will be implementing this from the future is that those traditional views, which are within the navigation application tree, in there I'll just be saving default views and process views that I'm using within the system, whereas any of my user views I will be pushing within this content store primarily to keep the 2 distinct. But of course you can implement that any way you wish within your system. Now, thank you for watching. Have a nice day.